Do you want to see every detail of the new RSI Polaris? Do you want to know which ships and vehicles fit in? And what you can experience on board? Then you are in the right place. The Robot Space Industries Polaris appears with a 324.3, and we were already able to take a detailed tour with it and take you with us to this really iconic ship. Because the Polaris not only is visually a blast, but also the inner values can convince. But step by step. Already in 2023, there was a first variant of the Polaris to be seen at the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo 2953. But this is the final, now coming into play variant, which has undergone some significant upgrades. And except for the currently inaccessible captain's quarters, all areas are accessible and we can show you everything step by step from the outside to the inside. These impressive engines accelerate this capital ship to 154 meters per second in SCM speed with a maximum boost of 250, as well as a nav max speed of 950 meters per second. The pitch and yaw is at 50 degrees and the roll at 25 degrees per second. And with this, the Polaris remains relatively good to handle and agile despite its size. But this chic Corvette offers a lot more. At the area with the orange background, we find in the front section 8 escape pods as well as various point defense turrets, where the Polaris sits on a total of 7. The 16 Arrested 3 missiles, which flank the cockpit, offer an aggressive look. But the highlight, of course, are the 28 size 10 torpedoes. These bodies are huge. In defense, the Polaris sits on 2 manned 4 size 4 turrets, as well as a double-size 6 turret in the front. And the 7 automated point defense turrets stretch over the entire ship and actually cover every area. The huge 3-point landing gear drives massively out of an area and offers the Polaris a safe stand, as we will see later. The animations in every area are absolutely breathtaking. Every flap, every opening, everything moves on this ship. Because not only the landing gear drives in and out, but also the propulsion gondolas fold accordingly, while small components almost drive in and out of the entire ship every time. An absolute highlight. And speaking of highlights, of course the Polaris has a full-fledged hangar, where we will see later which ships and vehicles we can load on the Polaris. And of course, there is enough space for an Scorpius, an F8 or F7. But not every heavy fighter fits into the Polaris, but more on that in detail later. But let's move on to the front category of this wedge-shaped capital class Corvette. All manable turrets can fire forward without restriction. And in addition, we have a lot of firepower to offer with the torpedoes and rockets. Because in total, the Polaris, without its rockets and torpedoes, can withstand over 10,000 DPS at 6,000 alpha damage. And in this section, the main armament is the double cannon pair with size 6. Here we already reach over 3,000 DPS on our own. A real punch. The 2 manned 4 cannon turrets with laser equipment also reach under 1,600 DPS each. And in addition, there are also 2 4 laser repeated equipped manned turrets which reach just under 1,100 DPS. And finally, we have a 4-side 3 laser repeater remote turret as well, another remote turret which secures the missile defense with 12 Ignite 2 missiles. Here you are ready for the next fight. The pilot has access to the size 3 missiles in the front, whereby the main armament, namely the size 10 torpedoes, can be only operated via its own station. And of course, we go into detail again on all these stations, all gun turrets and all areas of the Polaris in the interior section of this video. The rear area with the X-shaped engine layout is typical for RSI, whereby the animations when entering and exiting the engines are quite high level. In addition, the polishing pass has brought a lot of bonus points since last year, especially in terms of lighting and surface textures. So many details have been added, and the Polaris shines in the gloss that is worthy of it. So the Polaris does not have a retractable or adjustable VTOL engines, but a VTOL mode, which offers a clear boost in the atmosphere. Because this iconic capital ship is also completely flyable, land and take-off able in the atmosphere. And after the Polaris has made the takeoff for military capital ships flyable in the verse, it is only a matter of time until, for example, an Idris also follows in the game. The recently released point defense turrets, whereby the Polaris here with 7 pieces currently represents the maximum, already work, but are not yet reliable and are a first iteration of them. Also a so-called placeholder is the current ability of the Polaris to operate the ship in the hangar as a landing terminal, so to speak, so refuel and repair like on stations. Basically, this ability will also offer it later, but here with some specifications, so the carrying of fuel and ammunition or repair material. Basically, the Polaris comes with all the features that makes up this ship in the game, so no excluded areas, which will be supplied later. Also, the 2 sideway ramps for loading and unloading of ground vehicles and cargo offer a clear advantage. Because in total, the Polaris reaches 576 SCU cargo capacity on the cargo grid, whereby there is plenty of space for additional cargo or vehicles. But let's get to the huge interior and the possibilities that the Polaris offer for release. And for orientation, we show you the respective areas where we are right now. The bridge is equipped with a pilot, a co-pilot and the captain's seat, as well as 2 remote stations in the rear area. The pilot and co-pilot can control the ship and fire missiles. The captain's seat has only a nice view, and the 2 remote seats have access to the remote towers, which can be found in the rear area of the ship. So a remote gun tower in the back and a remote missile tower in the back. In addition, the co-pilot has the option of controlling the hangar details via his terminal, so the blast shields, which are available 4 times to enter or exit. A nice detail. And in addition, the hangar camera is also accessible via the station, so more features than the pilot. The remote towers are well positioned and not only offer influence possibilities down and back, but also indirect forward. This concludes the possibility of the bridge crew, the various stations. Right in the rear area of the bridge is the holo room, which is currently not fully functional. And in addition, some components are housed here, which can be found behind openable panels. Right behind the cockpit, we find 8 escape pods, as well as access to the elevator and the armory. And this armory is purposeful and sufficiently equipped for the entire crew for equipment, weapons and suits. Only the subsequent captain's quarter is currently not accessible yet. In the main corridor, we find 2 red doors, which provide access to the 2 manned gun towers in the upper area. Here, our gun tower crews are efficiently pushed up and forward into the tower, where they have a fairly good impact area of almost 360 degrees in the upper deck. Basically, the Polaris offers a long corridor and 2 decks, where we are here in the main upper deck. Subsequently, on the left, we find access to the various crew quarters, which basically offer all the same comfort with beds, storerooms and a small bathroom. This gives us enough space for the complete crew. And currently, the design is still very sterile and with very few details, so no decorations options or more. On the opposite side of the ship, we found a mess hall, with tables, a lounge area and a kind of television, also with currently no decorations. The hangar offers the end of the long main corridor, which we find in the upper and lower deck, which has 4 access doors, ones in the front, in the back and 2 to the sides. In the hangar itself, we have a surveillance camera which the co-pilot can operate from the cockpit, as well as the possibility to move cargo items into and out of the hangar by the elevator. And the blast shields here can also be operated by the cockpit co-pilot. With the two small cargo pull-ups, we can go directly from the hangar to the deck, into the lower cargo area, up or down. If we flank the hangar from the outside, we also get into a corridor leading to the right and left, which covers the hangar. Here we find mirrored on both sides a staircase down each, as well as a docking lock. These are identical for both sides. At the next, also red-lit doors, there are the other manable towers, which can be driven outwards, similar to the Aegis Hammerhead. And these side towers also offer an excellent fire range and can also fire indirectly forward, but not up or downwards. So these are limited to the side. And when not in use, these towers can also be protected by deactivating in the cockpit with another plate, thereby shielding them from damage. On the side door of the hangar, we find the medical station, where we find 4 Tier 2 medical beds, or mirrored on the other side, the brig, which we will come into a moment. There are also no decorative items, med pans or other medical equipment in the medical area, but the 4 different med bays in the Tier 2 equipment are already functional, so also for future spawning. Mirrored on the right side of the ship, there is the brig, so the prison with 2 prison cells, which also have video surveillance, which is visible in the reception area. And so we have arrived at the rear part of the ship. Here we find access to the hangar, as well as a staircase into the engine room area. But we also have a level layout here with a final elevator. And behind the window in the main deck, we have no direct access to the machine area itself, which is the deck below us, but an engineering console. And besides, we only have access to the jump drive and the gravity generator here. We find other components and the actual engines one deck lower, although there is an additional rear elevator here. The machine section is also a highlight, after many details have been lovingly implemented here, from animations to the lighting mood to individual elements. But there is also a lot of empty space and unused space here in the entire ship. And this extends across the entire Polaris. And to keep the overview, we make a jump there again forward into the front part of the ship and to the main elevator, which is located directly in the bridge area. Here we go down and there into the main tower, which is located directly under the cockpit. And this turret offers us access to 2 size 6 guns, which are equipped with ballistic ammunition and have a clear punch. Because with just under 3000 DPS and 300 rounds of ammunition, the Polaris alone with this armament has sufficient firepower. However, the actual core follows a room further. Because here we find the torpedo control room with the 4 torpedo pipes, the possibility to automatically load them, and the torpedo armory. To fire one of the size 10 torpedoes, it is necessary that the teammate takes a position on this control system and goes here into the remote tower. This consists of a small camera which is attached above the main turret, so under the ship. And with that, the thick torpedoes can also be fired. If we follow the corridor into the rear part of the ship, we find the revolver magazines for our cruise missiles or our torpedoes, whereby they are automatically reloaded. In the future, it will be necessary to refill these revolver magazines with new torpedoes or cruise missiles by taking them with our tractor beams or the hangar tractor beam by the direct ejected cargo space and loading them directly into the revolver magazines. This is supported by the inclined cargo elevator, which leads directly into the side vehicle hangar or cargo space. The Polaris offers space for up to 576 SCU and 2 completely sideways vehicle ramps, whereby we can drive through the ship without any problem. Another highlight is the tractor beam, which is attached centrally and in the middle, whereby we also find the control console directly in the cargo space. And in addition, we can use the two mentioned small cargo elevators, which are a direct connection to the hangar above, that is, to the ship's hangar itself. So we can quickly load and unload cargo from the hangar. And of course, we can use the integrated tractor beam, which not only allows a loading and unloading through the side rams or for the torpedoes, but also for cargo pieces from the hangar above. A real added value. Finally, the underdeck forms the machine section, where we can go on a tour with our engines and the water-cooled system. And here some visual highlights. And I can only recommend everyone to take a closer look at the Polaris in the near future. Basically, the ship offers a lot of space in almost every area, although we still have some areas in the industrial area with unused areas. But the ship therefore looks much larger. A real capital class. But also, various preparations for future engineering gameplay have already been implemented. And there are countless engineering consoles, holding points and possibilities to ensure our influence in energy distribution. Visually, the Polaris plays in the interior as well in the exterior in the absolute highest league for current ships in the verse. And also what gameplay mechanics and possibilities offer when the Polaris responds to almost everything that is currently necessary and possible. From integrated tractor beams, medical equipment via Tier 2 bases, as well as various features, the Polaris had everything on board that requires an extensive flight through the verse. And before we take a close look at what fits into the Polaris and what does not, let's take a look at how you enter or leave the ship most easily via the main elevator, which leads you to the bottom. And with that, we clarify the question which ships currently fit into the Polaris, which vehicles you can load on, and whether more ships. Basically, we distinguish between the vehicle hangar, which is located in the lower area, and the hangar for ships, which we find in the upper area. For loading and unloading of vehicles, we need a relatively wide, level surface, as the rams of the Polaris lie quite far to the outside, and here height differences do not compensate well. But it is of course possible to open individual rams of the Polaris, so to keep one side closed, for example. We can easily park vehicles in the size of an Ursa rover, whereas we can park several vehicles, up to 6, without problems in the interior space. The current limitation lies here in the height, which the axis offers, whereas it looks higher than it is actual. With a Nova tank or with a ballista, we are stuck on a currently invisible wall, whereas the haptic and acoustic feedback is clear and we just can go on. It is therefore to assume that vehicles in the category of a Nova tank or ballista cannot be loaded into the Polaris. Smaller vehicles, however, without problems, and here a lot of them. For the hangar area, we can confirm the F8 without any problems. It has enough space to the sides, to the front and the back. And the height also does not pose any problems here. Basically, the height of the hangar currently offers the limitation because the width and length is sufficient for most ships, but height is limited especially to the power field. But it should be noted that the height of a closed hangar, as we will see in a moment, is several meters more. Even if the power field shows us we have reached the height limit, we still have a lot of room to load more ships and vehicles with a few centimeters more height. So a Drake Vulture, for example, is no problem at all and can fit into the Polaris. But it is not possible to load an Aegis Vanguard series, because this is significantly too long. Even in landing mode, we have reached the maximum length and cannot park diagonally. Smaller ships such as a Terrapin are unproblematic. And of course also all medium fighters, which are currently flying in the birds, so F-7 Hornets and so on. And as mentioned, the current limitation is in height, although this is almost reached with a Hornet. With a closed hangar, it becomes clear that we still have a lot of space above the shown power field area. And smaller ships such as an Arrow or the Gladius can be loaded several times into the Polaris. So we can fit 6 Arrows inside one hangar of a Polaris, a little fleet. But I'm curious, what is your opinion about the RSI Polaris? the absolute savior, or a far too large ship? Big overpriced? Let us know. And with that, I say goodbye until next time. See you soon, and of course, see you in the verse. Thanks for watching.